Hey, 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 how are you? Saturday morning here in the US, but it's Saturday night in the Philippines, and we're going to bring a presentation. And let's get started with a little bit of an introduction. The presentation itself will be in about 20-25 minutes. So,
Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon for those who are coming from different places around the world. Okay, this is your chairman of the UCSSC welcoming you in the 2026, and we are thankful for the consistent attendees. We would like to persuade most of the coaches to upgrade themselves for the latest of coaching uh, knowledge that you can get coming from the UCSSC. The speakers coming from different countries, most of them are actually national coaches. We would like to ask you to at least spend about 1 hour to attend the UCSSC Sports Coaching Education. Thank you.
next week at this time, I'll be in St. Petersburg, Florida, and we'll be celebrating the new Hall of Fame inductees. Ray Luz coaches at the um, IU, Indiana University, and Kate Lunston. She's a coach in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and Matt Kretich. He coaches at the University of Tennessee. So that's on my agenda. But recently, we had a nice shot at and reacquainting podcast from a friend from long ago, Krista. I knew her as Krista DeCroix. She was on a podcast elsewhere and she talked about her journey as a swimmer and then as an adult. And it's sort of a nice transformational arc. We used Notebook LM to design this infographic where she joined the team. She talks about being a shy kid and then joining the Water Wizards in Peoria. She started it as a group 4 and moved on up. I was her coach, fortunate to be there in Peoria for a number of years. And later, she would be coached by Mike Smithers. He came after I did. I helped recruit him to the scene there. He had come from the state of Washington. Sadly, his life didn't um, last as long as it should. But then Krista eventually swam D1 swimming, and now she is a corporate coach, a coach of coaches. She has a business with a partner named Wendy. Anyways, um, you can hear things from Krista in 2 episodes of Heavy or Not. Number 78 is her voice, and 98, and number 97 is what we're going to play now. No problem. The other day, a podcast link came in my messages. And if you're into podcasts like I am, you do them and you listen to them. And Krista was interviewed, and we're going to hear from this podcast. And we've got the approval from Scott Greats to rebroadcast it in the next episode. But first, let's see what Notebook LM, the AI, came up with. And later, I think we'll hear Krista's voice in the future podcast.
When placed in a competitive environment and realizing you are entirely outmatched, a specific panic sets in. The instinct is to simply disappear. For 12-year-old Krista DeCroix, that desire to vanish was her default state. She was a skinny, profoundly shy kid who spent most of her time terrified of drawing attention to herself. The anxiety was physical. On Sunday nights, her dread of the upcoming school week and the terror of being called on triggered severe stomach aches. This childhood insecurity is a vacuum of self-belief. Without a sense of worth, a person lacks the internal structure to defend against the pressure of being seen. Instead of letting her retreat, her father pushed her to step onto a very different kind of stage. He told his 12-year-old daughter to try out for a competitive swim team called the Peoria Area Water Wizards. She stepped onto the pool deck, facing a massive deficit. To make the team, kids had to swim all 4 strokes. Krista could barely manage a butterfly or a breaststroke, landing her on the lowest rung of a roster filled with kids who had been swimming since they were 5. The psychological strain of that moment is immense. A young girl whose survival mechanism is invisibility is now standing entirely exposed in a swimsuit, surrounded by athletes who have already mastered the environment. At this stage, Krista didn't have the internal reserves to believe in herself. That belief would have to be imported from someone else. Enter Mark Rauterkiss. He was Krista's very first coach with the Water Wizards, the external catalyst who supplied the perspective she lacked. Coach Mark certainly spent time correcting her physical mechanics in the water, but his primary construction project was her mind. He was building psychological armor for a kid who felt defenseless. He installed a very specific athletic mindset. He taught her that raw physical skill has zero value on its own. To actually execute under pressure, that physical ability requires the structural support of intense work ethic and mental fortitude. This framework pays its dividends in the agonizing seconds right behind the starting blocks. When a swimmer steps up, the anxiety of competition is converted and locked into focus before the starter pistol even fires. This dynamic rewires a terrified brain. It takes the concept of accountability, which an insecure kid normally views as a looming punishment, and redefines it as the highest form of professional support. Buoyed by that accountability, Krista evolved. The deeply shy novice transformed into a fiercely competitive athlete, moving through the water with total command. The athletic payoff for that foundational training arrived years later when she secured an NCAA Division I college scholarship. At the elite collegiate level, everyone in the pool is fast. What separated Krista from her competitors was the mental resilience Mark had planted back when she was 12. The lane lines of that local pool functioned as a crucible, manufacturing a leader who viewed pressure as a prerequisite for performance. Fast forward to the present day. Krista Hawkins is now a high-level executive advisor and the co-owner of a firm called Future Legacy Partners. Her daily mandate involves coaching thousands of top business leaders. Behind closed doors, many of these successful executives struggle with the same self-doubt that haunted her in elementary school. To pull them out of it, she deploys a rigorous corporate methodology. She anchors
Hey, Dennis.
Yeah.
You're checking out the widgets now.
All right, guys. So basically, first and foremost, I'd like to thank the ASA for making this possible. I think it's critical to be able to upgrade our coaches. I think the cornerstone of our athletes are our coaches. Coaches are here almost indefinitely.
Can we make
As
this
we know, swimmers coming.
louder?
No.
Can we make the sound louder? It's quite small.
Yeah, no, I can't. The let's see.
All right, guys. So basically,
No,
first and foremost, I'd like to thank the ASA.
I can't. It's up full blast. Yeah, the quality of the videos are tough. Now, what I did do is I added the subtitles.
All right, guys.
See this title
So
at the
basically,
top?
first and foremost, I'd like to thank the ASA for making this.
So I added the words to some
Okay.
of it. But we're streaming now. That's why I had that other thing on. So it's going out on the YouTube. I don't know if anybody will be watching, but yeah, I like your haircut.
Thank you. Really hot here.
Yeah, we're just starting to get our warm weather coming.
But it's
Now,
raining in the area of Coach. What's this? Coach Rich Rogers.
yeah, Florida had some bad weather recently. So today you're going to do day one.
Yep.
How long will you keep the class going?
Let's see. I think that day one itself. Wow, that will be about 2.5 hours or 3 hours.
Okay. It'll start in about 10 or 12 minutes.
See.
Okay. And let me play this while it takes 6 minutes. And then at the end of that we can chat with people. I just want to keep the stream working fresh. The other day, a podcast link came in my messages. And if you're into podcasts like I am, you do them and you listen to them. And Krista was interviewed, and we're going to hear from this podcast. And we've got the approval from Scott Greats to rebroadcast it in the next episode. But first, let's see what Notebook LM, the AI, came up with. And later, I think we'll hear Krista's voice in the future podcast.
When placed in a competitive environment and realizing you are entirely outmatched, a specific panic sets in. The instinct is to simply disappear. For 12-year-old Krista DeCroy, that desire to vanish was her default state. She was a skinny, profoundly shy kid who spent most of her time terrified of drawing attention to herself. The anxiety was physical. On Sunday nights, her dread of the upcoming school week and the terror of being called on triggered severe stomachache. This childhood insecurity is a vacuum of self-belief. Without a sense of worth, a person lacks the internal structure to defend against the pressure of being seen. Instead of letting her retreat, her father pushed her to step onto a very different kind of stage. He told his 12-year-old daughter to try out for a competitive swim team called the Peoria Area Water Wizards. She stepped onto the pool deck, facing a massive deficit. To make the team, kids had to swim all 4 strokes. Krista could barely manage a butterfly or a breaststroke, landing her on the lowest rung of a roster filled with kids who had been swimming since they were 5. The psychological strain of that moment is immense. A young girl whose survival mechanism is invisibility is now standing entirely exposed in a swimsuit, surrounded by athletes who have already mastered the environment. At this stage, Krista didn't have the internal reserves to believe in herself. That belief would have to be imported from someone else. Enter Mark Rauterkiss. He was Krista's very first coach with the Water Wizards, the external catalyst who supplied the perspective she lacked. Coach Mark certainly spent time correcting her physical mechanics in the water, but his primary construction project was her mind. He was building psychological armor for a kid who felt defenseless. He installed a very specific athletic mindset. He taught her that raw physical skill has zero value on its own. To actually execute under pressure, that physical ability requires the structural support of intense work ethic and mental fortitude. This framework pays its dividends in the agonizing seconds right behind the starting blocks. When a swimmer steps up, the anxiety of competition is converted and locked into focus before the starter pistol even fires. This dynamic rewires a terrified brain. It takes the concept of accountability, which an insecure kid normally views as a looming punishment, and redefines it as the highest form of professional support. Buoyed by that accountability, Krista evolved. The deeply shy novice transformed into a fiercely competitive athlete, moving through the water with total command. The athletic payoff for that foundational training arrived years later when she secured an NCAA Division I college scholarship. At the elite collegiate level, everyone in the pool is fast. What separated Krista from her competitors was the mental resilience Mark had planted back when she was 12. The lane lines of that local pool functioned as a crucible, manufacturing a leader who viewed pressure as a prerequisite for performance. Fast forward to the present day. Krista Hawkins is now a high-level executive advisor and the co-owner of a firm called Future Legacy Partners. Her daily mandate involves coaching thousands of top business leaders. Behind closed doors, many of these successful executives struggle with the same self-doubt that haunted her in elementary school. To pull them out of it, she deploys a rigorous corporate methodology. She anchors her training in holistic health routines, forward-looking accountability, and what she calls love leadership. This corporate playbook is a direct mirror of the system Coach Mark Rauterkiss used on her decades ago. The most effective executive leadership strategies in the corporate world are often scaled-up, refined versions of elite youth coaching. If you strip athletics down to their absolute core, sports are simply games of time, space, and relationships. Mark used his time on that pool deck to build a relationship that moved a terrified 12-year-old from the back of the classroom to the head of the boardroom. That investment of belief refused to stay contained to the water. It created a cascading effect, branching out from one athlete and eventually touching thousands of professionals across the country. The weight of a coach's legacy lives in the belief passed to a single athlete, which then amplifies across every professional she eventually leads.
Hey, thanks for the shout out in memory, Krista. I hope you and your family and your partner and your business and everybody you're attached to, especially your clients, are appreciating your gifts and your leadership. I want everybody else to stay tuned, subscribe to the podcast, and in the next episode, we're going to hear Krista's voice. Thanks for all you do for our sport.
Today's fortune statement is:
self-awareness is the first step to gaining control.
this comes from Mental Skills for Young Athletes, written by John Hogg, PhD, a sports psychologist from British Columbia, Canada. The idea here is simple but not easy. Reflect on it, then write about how it applies to where you are right now. The book and the online course are available at swimisca.com. Mental skills grow through attention, not intention.
Asif Reza is actually one of the fastest swimmer, actually the fastest swimmer of Bangladesh.
That's great.
The whole Philippines now is very busy. Telling you. Competition, summer programs, competition every week. Knows about the coaches in other countries also in Asia.
So next Saturday, I am going to be in St. Petersburg, Florida, with a special program and our Hall of Fame people with ISCA.
We're gonna cut this one. We're gonna cut this in 1 hour.
Good. Yeah, I think after an hour, it's fine. Here, we'll hear your New Year's message. It'll only take about 2 minutes.
Happy New Year, everybody. This is Chairman Dennis Antonio Cordero, your Director General of the UCSSC. We would like to welcome you for the 2026, and we are so happy that we had been successful for the 2024 and 2025. Okay, we would like again to serve you at our very best. Okay, for this 2026. We hope that you can join us with our seminars online on Saturdays from 8:30, 9:30, and 10:30. Okay? You can have a choice between the three times, okay? We do have different speakers on each time, hoping that we would like to serve you with the 126 to 132 seminars for the 2026. Thank you and Happy New Year.
Well, that's sort of a reminder so that when people leave the webinar or the seminar, they're asked if they want to record a message. So people can leave us a message on their exiting, and they have to set up their microphone and their video camera, and then they can hit record and leave a message, and nobody else hears it at that time, but it's saved, and then
To
we can
Bangladesh.
later do that.
There are two Bangladesh. Two former swimmers.
Is your camps, have they finished, Dennis?
Oh, I am flying in another venue in 3 days. 4 days. Another month in another venue. Actually, I have 4 venues, but I already chosen no total of 6 venues, but I already chosen the better one. I don't want a hard situation where you're not well accommodated. Oh, this I'm quite disappointed because the accommodation is not that good. If it's the accommodation is good, that's it. We it's 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 enjoyable. We'll start in 3 minutes. It's been a long time that Bangladesh attended.
Yes, course.
I was already silent with Bangladesh because nobody attends in Bangladesh. There is Mizonga is here. Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon for those who are coming from different places around the world. Okay, this is your chairman of the UCSSC welcoming you in the 2026, and we are thankful for the consistent attendees. We would like to persuade most of the coaches to upgrade themselves for the latest of coaching uh, knowledge that you can get coming from the UCSSC. The speakers coming from different countries, most of them are actually national coaches. We would like to ask you to at least spend about 1 hour to attend the UCSSC Sports Coaching Education. Thank you. Mark, can you do the intro?
Yeah, we just did the intro. And it's good to have people here, and we're also streaming, so it'll be replayed. The session today is going to be from a friend that has presented before, Scott Volkers. I believe Dennis and Scott has worked together in the past. And we have a lot of excellent materials, and you'll be able to sit back and enjoy the presentation.
Okay. I'll take it from here. Okay. Sorry, I just arrived coming from a clinic. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from different parts of the world. Okay. I know that some of you will be attending on the WAPSU website. Okay. And for now, the current attendees, okay, of this elite coaching level 1, okay, the fastest swimmer of Bangladesh, MD Asif Reza. One of the fastest swimmer of Bangladesh, a female fastest swimmer before, Sonia Akhtar. One of the coach which is consistent on attending for about 3 years from Africa, Kenya, the Continental Director of Africa, Eric Risonga. And we have a university coach from the Philippines, Richard Ichage. I hope I pronounce it right. Okay. My co-host is actually Coach Mark Rotterkus, a water polo coach and at the same time swim coach. We have our topic for today. Actually, it had been released on a country, okay, where they trained national coaches, okay, and this is a series of coaching education for national coaches. and the series 1 will be now, okay? And we will be making this a coaching education for national coaching aspirants, okay? And we have the go signal coming from Scott Volkers to use this for coaching education of aspirant national coaches. Okay. We would like to start it by giving you the part 1, okay, of the elite coaching by Scott Volkers, a 10 times world record breaker coach and the former coach of Susan O'Neill, which is breaking 205 record of Olympics, which is a 205 that time. We would like to start it, hoping that you can enjoy, okay, the videos now. Okay.
If people want to
All right,
put
guys.
any comments in the chat.
Basically, first and foremost, I'd like to thank the ASA for making this possible. I think it's critical to be able to
Take note.
upgrade our coaches. I think the cornerstone of our
Yeah, you can put your name on the chat box now, okay? So we will be updated in every 5 or 10 minutes. Please give a heart, okay, showing that you are actually attending, okay? Please, okay, now we will start.
our athletes are our coaches. Coaches are here almost indefinitely. As we know, swimmers come and go. And we really need to focus on upgrading our knowledge and getting better. So I'm hoping this creates some platform of cross-sharing and that we're a little bit more open to ideas. We all train on full deck except for Neptunes and Inspire, but you know, that we become less of rivals and more of healthy competition is what I'm trying to get at. The other thing is I'm going to encourage everybody to ask as many questions as possible. And please, I'm going to reiterate that the only question that is stupid is the one that's never asked. So please, if it sounds ridiculous, and I'm going to say this, I've asked in the last day, I've asked some really crazy questions. Please, I want to encourage you guys to, no matter what it is, just ask. It might be something related to age group. It might be something related to learn to swim. Scott is here for all of that. It doesn't necessarily have to be performance swimming. So please, he's here to be utilized and share his experience, wealth of experience and knowledge. I'm going to hand over to Scott now. Thank you.
Thanks, Dylan. And thanks to the association for bringing me over and Dylan for organising it. But some very interesting points there. Like my history, I come from Brisbane, which is possibly the swimming capital of the world, between us and somewhere maybe Los Angeles. But I think we have a higher ranking than Los Angeles. So what we aimed to do there was I created a system. I was the head coach of Queensland, where we set up for sharing of ideas with all coaches, and especially high performance coaches and a second level down, so that we cross-fertilized every coach's knowledge with everyone else's. And then it's up to the coach what sort of things that they like to add to their program or take away from their program, depending on how they look at a situation. So we would have 5 to 8 Olympic coaches at least in the room at the same time, and one would deliver their system to all the others, and then vice versa along, and share all the ideas on a whiteboard on how they train and how they perform. So I think this was one of the greatest things that we had in Queensland. The rest of Australia wouldn't do it, and they suffered, and they still suffer to this day. If you want to suffer, then don't share. If you want to prosper, share, because that's where you get the ideas from. I do not coach and would not coach the same way as I would have 5 years ago. I would coach differently, or maybe 7 years ago, and then developing new systems after that and new thinking. So changing from what I did, even though I may have got world records in the past, I still believe there's a better way. And I knew that in my systems I had gaps or holes or things that needed to change, but it was, did I have the knowledge to change it, or had someone given me a better way that I could understand? No. So, but once this came along, I've taken it on board. So what I like to share with you guys is that it's not to tell you how to do it. It's to give you more ideas or more a platform to build your own programs on top of, from a structure that I know does work and can be very good. It's guaranteed to make things faster, in my opinion, of course, and you don't have to take that. But all I would say is you listen in, see what you make sense of, what triggers the ideas in your head, and add it to programs or take it. But there should be some interesting stuff here. I first delivered this to South Africa when Rocco got me over there. And then I went and worked with him a few times for numbers of weeks, and he really prospered with Tatiana and Kayleen, not Catherine, yeah, Kayleen there, and the rest of his team. I did a lot of work with them, and he really appreciated how he changed, because it was exactly the same reason I went there, was because he felt that in South Africa, they're having success with age groupers, but not with open. So the transition from age group to open was a weakness, he thought. And I think it was more for himself, but he opened it up to everybody. And then he took time to understand the program. So this is why you've got going to have all the notes. You can keep asking the questions. I'm here for 3 weeks. To understand exactly what is said and how it's implemented along the way can be a little bit confusing, because you say, I'm doing this, I'm doing this. So how are you doing that? I go, no, that's not what it is. And so clarification in time is needed to understand it sort of fully. But the way I work, I'm not as smart as this guy. He's got all the science background. I'm just an average dumb coach, really, that's trying to find a way that makes it better for everybody else. I've spent many years trying to help other coaches too. That's what I'm here for. So I'm not here to say your way is wrong. I'm not here to say my way is right. I'm going to give you a whole platform that I really have liked hearing it, and I changed my systems over to this just when I was coaching in Brazil. So I was there for 5 years. After 2.5 years, I changed over to this system, and my results were much better. I learned a lot about sprinting from that. In that time, I killed many a sprinter before by overwork, overstressing, too much distance, too much effort, too much quality. Not too much quality, too much, what would you say, just crushing them. So it doesn't, I won't use the word quality, because obviously sprinters need a lot of quality, but it's different type of quality. So I'm guilty of doing that in the past, and I'm guilty of not giving enough distance work to other people that may need it. And so we all have these issues we're trying to work out. Definitely are having gaps in the power phase. Why did the swimmers go off at the end compared to should be coming on? So looking for the reasons why this happens. And I really believe that the system sort of helps clarify that to me. My background, I started as a 19-year-old and learned to swim. From my old coach got me on board, and I went from there. So I've covered every position from toilet cleaner to Olympic coach in swimming that there is, as well as maintenance guy and vacuum boy. So there's not much that I haven't done. I've lectured to learn to swim teachers on the implementation of high performance techniques to learn to swim teachers. That's probably my most profitable day. I earn in a day there that I can earn here in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
But so it's about sharing knowledge to people and giving whatever we can. So don't be scared to ask questions, and be flexible in your mind to what you want to accept. And I thought I'd start off the talk like that because Dylan was in on my capacity versus power from South Africa. So he got all my notes and all of the overheads and so forth, and he's changed them. He changed them. So the introduction I've used is I don't know how he's changed. I don't know what's coming up.
They're better. Just tell them they're better. Say it's better.
No, but see, this is what I wanted to sort of let you know, that what one person thinks is important, the next person doesn't think is important, so they take it out. So all my first slides, the introduction of that were taken out because Dylan doesn't think they're important, obviously. And what he put as the first slide, I don't think is the right slide for first. So it's not a criticism in any way. This is what humans are about. So it's about what you feel is important to you, grasp it, intertwine it into what you believe in, but don't be scared to adapt, overcome as you go along. So we're starting this system. Well, I'll go to the first slide, which is totally the wrong slide to start with, in my opinion, because it's about super compensation. Way over the top from where we should start. So if we go to the next one, we can come back to that 20 times during the slide. But so the whole of the system that we're going to talk about is breaking it down to, I guess, terminologies that you may or may not know. I guess they have this slide.
They've got it in there.
Second page. Second page. So we're talking about the terminology so you know. AEC means aerobic capacity. We have capacity versus power, two different sections. So the capacity is like a fuel tank. It's building a fuel tank. So in the beginning phases of your training, everyone seems to be looking for that slide. Not there? What? Okay, all right. So it's up there. Sorry guys. So this is just the terminology anyway, but I think it's important. So traditional periodization, the aerobic capacity is first, but developing it in isolation, because aerobic power and anaerobic power will be antagonistic to this system. So in our usual systems that we've done for many years, we've been doing aerobic capacity type work, and then a bit of power work, and then back on anaerobic capacity work, and then more power work or aerobic. So we'd be intermixing these things. Well, the scientists that have the better brains than what I have are telling us that if you mix the two systems together, they fight against each other and won't allow you to develop. So the idea of this is to break down into aerobic capacity and anaerobic capacity in one section, and for 7 weeks, say 7, 8, 9 weeks, and then your power comes in at a separate time later in your preparation. And then the one thing that's not mentioned yet by me, it might be in the slide, I'm not sure, is what we call, to me, the most important part, the speed factor. Speed doesn't come into either of those categories. Speed can be done and developed the whole periodization, through the whole system, from start till finish. And I think it can be used from the first week till taper, in the end of taper, ready to go into competition.
Sorry guys, it's on the digital format. If you have the digital format that I sent out, it's on there, that page. Sorry, my mistake.
Okay. But it's just an overview. So the interesting part there is that speed development, which we'll talk about what is speed compared to what people think it is, can be used at any time through a whole preparation without fear of interfering with your other systems. So, but in the capacity phase, which we're talking today, we're talking about the first one here, AEC, aerobic capacity. Basically, we all know what aerobic is, and we have to then decide, well, what's aerobic capacity? We've already had a bit of a talk about that this morning, and this can change. But the important part is we're not bringing in power through the first part of this whole system because it becomes antagonistic. So basically, if we read through that, it just explains each system as we go. But we don't need to get into the whole lot. But just so you know, the terminology or the acronyms: AEC, aerobic capacity; ANC, anaerobic capacity; AEP, aerobic power; ANP, anaerobic power, and then taper. We know what that is, and the only system that's not in there is speed. So we color code this later on to make it easier for you, and you'll see in your slides that it's color coded so we can get a better grip on what we have in front of us. Now, I guess this slide is about basically races and systems, how long races last versus how long, which systems needed to be developed to get it. So it's just to give you an idea of the mixtures of each amount of races. We got a, oh no, I don't have a, my little thing doesn't work on this. Normally I wiggle it around and show. So if you're going to do 40 minutes, a 40-minute race there, you know that it's going to be aerobic almost all and then a sprint at the end. So, but if you're going to go a 50 meters, which is sub 30 seconds, there's going to be a great part of it being anaerobic and a small part being, very small part being aerobic, if at all. Maybe at the 45-second mark it might be, but I don't know about under 30. And then obviously the ATP system, which is the instant energy that we have stored up in the body. So it's just a slide to show that there's different amounts needed for each different event. And Del and I spoke this morning about understanding what you've got in front of you as a team. You've got a whole group of athletes. Every one of them is different. The question we must ask ourselves, am I doing the right thing by this athlete and by this athlete and this athlete individually? And the way I like to think about it myself, because it helps me to understand, is, especially when I was in South Africa, was the animal kingdom. And I look at it like the same way as the animals. So are you a cheetah? Yet are you a hyena? Are you a lion or a leopard? Each one of them has a different energy system that will last a different amount of time that they need to do. And just because you're a cheetah, we can't run you with the hyena. And if we do, we know what happens. They overheat and die. So I like to look at it like that. So we don't want to run the cheetahs with the hyenas, the 1,500-meter guys with the sprinters. So understanding that, I think, is very, very important to come to grips. We've seen it many a time. We'll write one program up, give it to everybody. Are you breaststrokers? Just keep up. Just do freestyle. In Australia, we had no breaststrokers a few years back, and that was the reason why, because our lanes were filled with people doing endurance, and the poor old breaststroker just got no chance to do breaststroke. And then if they did, it's keep up. So what do? 50s on 50 for them becomes anaerobic, where a freestyler becomes aerobic easy. So just understanding what we've got in front and what they're aiming at across the whole board is very, very important to that we don't kill our athletes. And that's what we don't want to do, but it happens. And back in the day, what changed Australia with breaststroke was we had, because of that reason, one coach decided that we should bring in national breaststroke camps, and we did. So the breaststrokers got their chance, and things started to roll from there. Then we went through women's world champions, Lindley Crane, and Olympic world record holder Sam Riley, and went Lisa Jones. There's just a string of them one after the other. But before that, there's basically 0 or 1 person in the women's. In the men's, there was quite a few as well. So it's interesting. Make a change, and you can get results from it. So you do have this slide. Yeah, they got it. So aerobic capacity. What do we look to have for our aerobic capacity? What is it? And what do we use it for? We use the aerobic system for recovery swimming. So we use it for when we've done hard sessions before and we need to recover. This is probably the main reason why we want sprinters to do aerobic work. It's not for their event. It's for them to be able to recover quicker from the training to go into the next training session. Or if you think about it in competition, we've got heat, semi-finals, finals. So we need their recovery system to be very good. Multiple swims in a day, so forth. So we have, now this is the part I'm not sure who has the understanding, because in Australia it never used to be the same. We have 3 different phases of aerobic. Aerobic 1, 2, and 3. Are you familiar with 3 systems of aerobic? Because back in other countries they only have 2. I wish the scientists could come up with the same terminology across the world. It would be very easy. So aerobic 1, what is aerobic 1? So some people have lactate machines, some people have heart rate machines, some people have nothing. So what do? So we look at the different ways to work out what we're working with. So we've got 60 to 70 beats below maximum is the area. Now, a lot of us take that 200 beats per minute is maximum as a guess, so we get down to 130, 120, 130 heart rate being the zone for aerobic 2. Aerobic 1. The one thing we don't know, we can't tell, is what every athlete is actually doing with their lactate system. So if their lactate system goes above 2, well, they're not aerobic 1 anymore. So someone, little Johnny, we talk about the breaststrokers in the end of the line, they're working harder than other people. Or we work for someone, I believe, like this young lady over here, that actually tries hard in everything all the time. We as coaches need to work out exactly what we want to give and make sure that the athletes only give what we want them to give. Because they'll say, that was easy today. I did that, but they didn't really do it the way you planned. And then the next session, they don't have the energy supply at hand ready for the next session when you want them to bang it out. So keeping an eye on your really keen swimmers to make sure that they are working in the right zone. Developing your aerobic system for these guys, which is one of our weaknesses, because once we start testing some of these guys in a warm-up, we're finding lactates of 5 and 6 in a warm-up. So they're not aerobic at all. So building that aerobic system will give them the ability to do things easier and to work with. So how many times a week can we use aerobic 1? 10, every session. Use it for recovery, you can use it for capacity building. But to do it for capacity, you would need to be doing a big session on it. If you want to do just an aerobic 1 capacity, you could go for 5,000 meters just doing that to build a capacity of aerobic 1. So, but we use it a lot for recovery, for skill development, for types of work that can be mixed in in recovery. But if you're going to use it into flip-flop sets where you go aerobic 1, 2, and 3, 3, 2, and 1, just for, and that's once again, it's like recovery, distance for stroke work, skill work, holding breath, hypoxic work, or minimizing for sprinters, minimizing or maximizing the ability to hold the breath. And then it's hard for breathing, but it's not hard on the heart rate. So minimum stroke count, minimum breath count, work like that. A lot of that's done in that zone and the aerobic too. Very short rest, obviously, or no rest at all for aerobic 1. So used for skills and drills, used for kicking, swim offs, in between efforts. So it depends how you want to use it. We mostly know the system, no doubt. So aerobic 2, we'd move up. I probably use the heart rate system more than anything else because we don't have lactate systems on hand, lactate tests on hand. So the 6 seconds over 6 seconds of heart rate for the 0 on the end and take it from that. Use that. So at 50 to 60 below max. So if we want to go in, I don't know if it's written there, no. So I'd go there in the 130, 140 range. On the next slide. That's on the next slide. Yeah. 130, 140 range, and then aerobic 3, the 150, 160. But that's just generally speaking. So what you've got to be careful of there is testing your athletes to see actually where their maximum is. So if we're saying a 70 below max for Kieran Perkins when his maximum used to be 163 or something like that, if he was 70 below, he'd have to be at 90. So just understanding that someone else's max might be 215. So there's a variation in the heart of different people. Lactate 2 to 3 in the aerobic 2 area. How many times per week? You cut back a little bit so you can't use it as much, 6 to 8 times. So you have recovery times there, which is very important. We have many slides coming up that show recovery times. You can recover from aerobic 1 in 6 hours. You can do 10,000 meters and be recovered in 6 hours with energy, maybe a bit fatigued. That's why I had the comment from the breaststroke board this morning. He said that the coach made him go 5,000 meters each session. So I said, well, those 5,000 meters can be done 10, 20 different ways. 5,000 meters can be your easiest session you've ever done, or it can be absolutely excruciating over the top. Depends on what is in that session. So distance doesn't mean fatigue. So I think that's important. I look back in the years gone by and I saw people, Alex Popov, used to spend a lot of time in this with Gennady. They'd do a 5,000 meter swim one week and then 5100s another week, or 25 200s, all in it. What did he call it? Not critical time. Cruise speed. So I think Alex was at like 106 to 100, his cruise speed, but at such a low stroke count, but all mechanically perfect in the technique. That was the important thing. And if there was one thing I want to stress to all coaches, that slow swimming is the most important swimming you can do, because it's the hardest to do perfectly with the technique, because the body can want to get off balance much easier. So if you stress how well your swimmers swim with this in the aerobic area, the better they will swim when you go fast. And what I hear is, oh, but I don't do that when I go fast. And that's not correct. You just can't see it as closely because there's more splash and so forth. It's usually still there, the same faults in dropping away in freestyle or slipping of the elbows or the position of the head and so forth. It's usually there, but not as easy to see. So I do a lot of work in slow speed, working on technique over a long period of time. And to add to that, you're doing your stroke counts and so forth. If you want to put in breath counts for longer, but more stroke counting. I believe breaststrokers and butterflies should count every lap of their swimming. Freestylers and backstroke is a bit harder because they've got to do double the counting, but unless you count every second stroke and multiply by 2, but then we bring maths into it, and some swimmers are not very good at maths. But anyway, that skill factor is very high on my list. So we teach skill, we teach distance per stroke, and it's going to come down to speed, distance per stroke, and stroke count. That are your only factors that you can change the outcome of a race. So the only way you can change speeds by traveling better per stroke, either doing more strokes if you run out of strokes you can possibly do, or just getting more distance each time you swim. So they're very important. And aerobic 3, they've got rest per 100, 10 seconds rest in aerobic 2. So if you do 3100s, 10 seconds rest at a nice even heart rate, obviously that's going to do it, and it's not going to be too fatiguing. But you don't have to do it like that. It can be totally mixed in with kick and pull and drills and so forth. Everyone should be as imaginative as possible without having to in my opinion, overthink. Some people like to overthink and overstress every situation. Some people like to keep it super simple and do it. So it depends on what you are as a person, what you like to see, what you like to do. And then aerobic 3, 30 to 40 beats below max, which is getting very close to the top end of that, is to anaerobic threshold, which is here we got 3 to 4 lactate, which we all talk about as being the anaerobic threshold. So this piece of your training, like I said, we don't go into power, where anaerobic threshold training is in the power area, but this is the aerobic area. So, but if you look at it from this zone, you're working every system up to threshold, and the more you push your capacity in aerobic 3, what you are doing is increasing your VO2 max. You're pushing your anaerobic threshold higher without having to stress the system, the next system above it. So you're going to get gains in VO2 max and anaerobic threshold without having to work at that level. So by pushing the aerobic zone up higher and higher, you become better in that system. And it's much safer without having to get too much fatigue. Sprinters, my belief really now would be to say that they would never touch anaerobic threshold. It's just a zone that's not good for them. They get too fatigued and drop away. So, but everyone else needs it. But a 50/100 meter swimmer doesn't need to do it as much as 200, 400, 800. So that's just an opinion there, and I could be proved wrong with that. I'm sure Dylan's had much more scientific things about that than I have, but I just don't think I haven't seen good results from too much threshold work, unless the athlete is still does 100, but is very good 200 person, then they probably be able to do it. So we do have that. Say like Tatiana Schoenmaker, she can handle it because she's got quite a good aerobic system, and what she's done in the last 2 years has built the speed system to come back up to match it. So she has the ability to work in a steady state or threshold area and keep speed, but it becomes a fine-tuning part of the balance between the energy systems. So just to be aware of it. So what's the recovery on aerobic 3? 10 hours. So the faster we go in any energy system, the longer it takes to recover. So if you want to break it down to be simple, not scientific, the faster you go, the shorter you have to go. And the faster you go, the more time it takes to recover. So the faster you go, the less energy supply you have for that event. So like we just said, aerobic 1, you can go 10,000 meters. There's a slide with that on it somewhere. Yeah, I don't know where that is, but if you talk about 100 meter speed, you have a maximum of 8 minutes of speed, of energy. And so there's a lot less energy available. So if we say, no, we want them to be tough, we want them to go for 25 minutes of 100 meter speed, 1, you either won't get 100 meter speed, or 2, they won't be back the next day ready to swim again. We must remember that what we want as a coach is not one session. I think Dylan reminded me what I said in his clinic. I said that one session doesn't make a season, but one session can kill a season. If you go too hard in that one session, 1 week, you push that a little bit too hard, they go into overtraining, takes a long time to recover. And I'm talking minimum 9 to 10 weeks, maximum, I don't know, because I might have stopped, but maximum I've had, I overtrained sprinter in Brazil, a girl, and she was 9 weeks before she went fast again. And I overtrained Susie O'Neill with velocity work one time, and it took her 3 months to come back again. But the important thing to remember is once she got back, she broke the world record that day, and she was finally back out of it. So it's very, very important not to push for the toughness. We don't think in toughness, and in Australia we had much of it. There's a big difference between training smart and training tough. You know, so be careful of the training tough. It doesn't work all the time. You know? We think it does, but I think it just makes the coach feel better to think their swimmers are tough. but does it do what we really want? I think there's an important statement on the side there. It says, develop these zones slowly, adjust your distances and your cycles with variation, continuously getting the athlete to check heart rates, and the more practice, the better. So over a period of time, you'll tighten the cycles, but keep the distances, and they will get better and better, either heart rate or at recovery. So as they can do something that they couldn't do at the beginning of the season, you can then adjust it to be a tighter cycle or a longer set. And that's the way you should look at it. I remember one day standing on the pool deck watching, or timing actually, Grant Hackett down at his program, and he did a heart rate set. And the way the mind of the athlete's mind works, he did this very hard set, 3,000 meter set. He touched the wall and he looked up at me and he said, that was a PB set. He said, now I want to try and work towards making that on a 5-second faster cycle with a better average time. So he thought about it the whole time through about what's the next step. Not that that's always correct to do it the step that he's talking about, because one thing he did suffer from, in my opinion, was getting to be slightly overtrained, so he didn't taper as well. We can talk about that later. But his coach wouldn't agree with that. But because he's so keen, he would push himself that little bit harder, like I was mentioning before. So we've got to be careful of the keen athlete or the keen coach. So if you want to get the result at the end of the day. Any questions on any of that at the moment? Let's see what the next slide is. So you've got your sessions, your differences between the 3, aerobic 1, 10 sessions a week, aerobic 2, 8. So that means doesn't mean you're just doing one whole session of aerobic 1, by the way. They can be totally mixed and matched. So you want to be focusing on, in this early phase, you're only going to be doing 2 sessions to possibly 3 sessions at the very outside of anaerobic capacity. So you still have 7 sessions left, plus the filling of the rest, if you're doing 10, to do aerobic work. So you need to break it up, mix it up, change it, and add it in the best way. Recovery times, 6 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours, or less depending on the age and level. So there's always the question of age groupers versus open swimmers. And I see that. I've been told in the past by people that age group swimmers, they don't lactate, so you just can give them plenty. That's not true. We tested that and they do lactate the same way. They just recover quicker naturally being young people. I think they can do this type of system. I don't see any reason why, but because what we have in Australia, I'm not sure here yet, but we would have, average in a general club, we would have a good couple of youngsters coming through that would have to train with the top group. So it happens quite a bit that they have to do the senior type work, and it works. So I think don't be scared to look at different systems for what you've got. But if you've got only a young age group program, I don't think the whole system is necessary. You can mix and mash everything together for your youngsters. But the key factor is what I believe is develop their speed and develop their aerobic system at the same time and get them fitter but faster. I always like to think about what's the most important ingredient of sport. If you were going to pick one in basically any sport, what would it be, the most important ingredient? And my opinion, have to be speed. If you are blessed with speed, talk about weightlifting, it's the fastest event, fastest sport there is. Any game of tennis or football or swimming, it's meters per second. How fast can you run? How far can you kick, which is speed? So to me, it's get the speed, develop the speed all the way through whilst developing the other systems. That's the key factor. If you look at someone who wins the 1500 at the Olympics, it's usually a guy that's very fit who's got the fastest swimming velocity. We go through history because we can easily do it in Australia because we've had every 1500 metre champion bar the last couple. So we go back to a Stephen Holland who was 15 minutes, 15:02. So his velocity was only like a 58, 56 second swimmer per 100. So he could hold, his critical velocity was like 1 minute or 59 point something. So when you add those up for 1500, you end up at 1502. Then along comes a Glenn Houseman or a Daniel Kowalski who had a faster, well, Glenn Houseman was next to, wasn't as fast, about a 5400 freestyle, but a critical velocity of 59 lower. And then comes Daniel Kowalski who could go 50 or somewhere thereabouts for 100 meters. So his meters per second was faster. So he went to 14:53. Comes along Kieran Perkins who can go 49 for the 100. So and hold his critical speed of 58 high. And then comes Grant Hackett who can go 48. So his critical speed was 58.7. Then comes Sun Yang or one of the others who can Taiwan Park and 48 and 47 second people. So they've got this ability to speed and a training for endurance. So it's maintaining the speed. So the ones that can go the fastest are the ones that can win. Very rarely it's a plugger that gets along. And if you look at the open water, I think the same thing. If you can't sprint, you're not going to win. If you can't change speed, you can't win. If you can't finish with sprint, you're not going to win. We've seen that more and more. I watched an interview with Brett Hawke, I think the other day, with the coach of the Brazilian girl that won the open water, how he changed the plans all the time so they they didn't know what she was going to do. So, but changing speed. So velocity to me is the number one. And then this word super compensation comes up. Super compensation is what happens after the recovery period. It takes a little bit longer than being recovered to make them, and I won't even confess that I can exactly say perfectly what it is, but it's when the body is fully recovered and they get the regeneration process, and it takes that little bit longer to come back up. So it's super compensating rather than just recovering. So if you want to get better compensations from your training effects, then you allow more recoveries between your main sets. So if we were to flip back to this first slide, you would see if you're going to do intense aerobic work, you're going to be recovered in 6 hours, but you're going to have your super compensation coming through at 28 hours. So it's a much longer recovery to get maximum. So as a coach, you've got to pick out how your weekly system is, what your weekly cycle is. What do you think's the most important? But as we get up towards the intense work, so intensive anaerobic, we're talking 48 hours to over 72 hours. So you add another day of recovery time if you want to get. So if you did a main session on a Tuesday afternoon, if you want to back it up on Thursday, you can. But if you backed it up on Friday, then you've got 24 hours more. So you've got 24 hours more of super compensation to build a stronger system. That's how I look at it. Do you agree with that, Bill? In basic talk? Yeah. Yeah. So it's just another thing you can look at. I think you don't go wrong if you go with recovery times, but if you want to play around with super compensations, and you could possibly spread it out, and that's probably what Mooney does. Yeah. So he goes over a 10-day cycle rather than a 7-day cycle or a 6-day cycle, and then he'll have 4 days off. So the 4 days off allows for super compensation, but also allows you to spread out your main sets over that block. So he's playing with different systems. That's the girl who broke the world record in the backstroke in Tokyo, that won in Tokyo. So now she's left it. Well, he left her and she didn't follow. So, anyway, any questions on that? Or are you happy?
Guys, anything? All good online?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great.
Cool. It's a B.
This is just a breakdown.
You got a question?
Yes.
Good.
Sorry, coach. You mentioned recovery.
Color.
The recovery.
Oh, recovery, yeah.
Yeah. Every system, everybody, every person has a different kind of recovery. Am I right?
I would say that it'd probably be fairly correct, but generally speaking, energy systems take X amount of time. So different people would have different sized tanks, which would therefore make different recovery to get back to full tanks, I would say. Yeah.
Exactly. Because we are training the group of kids, let's say mainly age group kids.
Yeah.
And the session that we are in a training, which you mentioned, the aerobic 1, 2, and 3, is going to be applied different recovery for a different kind of body.
Different kind of body. Different, yeah, body, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the who's in an anaerobic way, who's in an aerobic way as a body. I mean, some swimmers are very good for the aerobic, and some swimmers are good for the anaerobic, sprinters and the long distances.
Yeah.
So what is your suggestion? What we can do? We make them in something, we find a way in the middle. The session that we apply, let's say my swimmers, they swim 3K in the morning and nearly 5K in the afternoon, in the evening. So this, let's say 7 to 8K swimming, how I can find a way in between to give them for the recovery after the session, especially on the main session, which is in the evening.
Well, I think the recovery, when you have different people, what I'm thinking, some of them are sprinters, some of them are long distance. So there's one thing for certain: if we put the sprinter in and do the same as the long distance work, even if you met it in the middle, the sprinter will be more fatigued and either not recover or take longer to recover. So my question, my way to come back would be to say, I need to select the swimmers in my own mind that I don't want to push to get to that tired level so that they don't need longer recovery. So the sessions might mean cutting back for you. Don't do you stop at this point where you keep going at that point. So what you're doing is adjusting for the sprint versus distance type person. I would be going that way myself. And I think swimmers need to understand, as a coach, they're not showing favoritism. They are showing, they understand that you need something different to what you need. And,
Exactly.
and I think, and we have one swimmer here, getting groups of, and I've seen many of it in the past, at senior highest level. When a sprinter gets to rest, the distance people call them weak. We as coaches have to be careful not to allow that. So in Brazil, I really worked on making the sprinters out to be the tough guys, because the sprinters will work twice as hard as the other guys when it's fast time, and they need to be recovered. So we need to really make the swimmers understand why we're doing stuff, not just shut up and do what I tell you.
Exactly. But we have to make them understand here. I agree. Thank you, coach. Thank you.
Yeah, so that's the way I would do it. I've had plenty of young kids in the past, 10-year-olds. I've coached every level of swimmer from the very beginning, from 3-year-olds that can do very good butterfly right through to Olympic level. But yeah, it's getting them to understand. Would you agree? You're a swimmer. What do you, when you're in a pool, if you see the sprinters stop doing work? Yeah, well, that. you understand because you're educated in this area, but there's a lot that are not educated.
Yeah, well, some people just don't want to do the work that they have to do, and then they.
Yeah, well, they're the part-time swimmers or the unmotivated swimmers or whatever. But we had a lot of this problem. You know, the distance guys would call themselves the engine room, and the others were, you know, the softies. But so we'd make a point of it every time. Look, the sprinters are out last again. The sprinters do 3 to 4 kilometers, and they're still going at the end of the session when the distance people are out getting a towel, because there's a lot more rest, but there's a lot more execution as well. So it's interesting. We got, it's just showing the lactate levels and the heart versus the heart rate levels, depending on which way you want to look at it. This one just gives you some idea of the sets. Beginning, like you've got your youngsters there, beginning 800 to 1600 meters, 10 to 20 minutes per set. And it just, so you can go 90 minutes up to 6,000 meters for an advanced swimmer. So that would be a Alex Popov or someone in the distance area, but we don't really want our 10-year-olds probably going a 6,000 meter set, might be a bit over the top. But especially 6,000 or, to be honest, even 1,600 meters of slop. And I'm sure that I'm going to be onto the swimmers here, because you'll get a heads up that if I see them swimming rubbish, I'll be telling them about it. So at any time in swim down after main set, if it's not concentrated swimming, it's not good enough. That's simple. So if you want to get better, you do everything better, not what you. And I believe that, like freestyle, my statement is there's only one type of freestyle, that's 6-beat kick. If you're not doing 6-beat kick, every second of your training session, you must have a band on your feet or a pull buoy between your legs. And girls don't get them, only boys. Sexist, that is, I know, but that's the way it goes. But that's a physiological thing, reasoning for that. So, yeah, it's yeah, well, that's one of the reasons, yeah. And I do pull buoy plus fins, but no kicking the fins. It's just for body position, things like that. So you're overcoming the problems that come up in training. Yeah, we see it in backstroke a lot, the rolling of the hips, the kicks that go like this and stuff. So we have to find ways especially in
Okay. We will be making this 1 hour only on the part 1. This will only be 1 hour on the part 1. Then we will go on the part 2, 1 hour again. Okay. The part 2 will be this week. The part 2 will be this week. Okay. So everybody, okay, today is the part 1, and next week we'll have the part 2, okay, together with you, okay. So that's all for today. We will be having the part 2, okay, on I can set it on Thursday or Friday. Okay. Guys, open your windows. We'll take a picture. Open your windows. We'll take a picture. Okay. This is only part 1. Okay. So the topic was given, emphasized about aerobic. Okay. And where to use the aerobic. Okay. On a program of a national coach. Okay. How to use it on a mileage with that kind of emphasis of aerobic. Okay. Now the second part will be this week. Okay. This is a national coaching education. It's not an ordinary thing. It's for those who are aspiring to be a national coach. Okay. This is the education only for those who are aspiring to be a national coach. Okay, so uh, I I was really expecting this kind of number. Okay, Coach Mark, can you take a picture on this one? Okay, guys, take a picture.
Yeah, everybody wave. Looks good. It's nice to see everybody. Have a safe week.
Okay, okay, guys. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, we're going for part two, maybe on Thursday or Friday. Okay, thank you, thank you.
Okay, I think I'll end up with you guys can log out, but I'm going to run that extra podcast again. If you didn't catch it before, you can listen or just tune in on your own.
Okay,
Yeah.
Mark, I need to leave. Okay,
Okay, that's good.
so
Yeah, you leave.
yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
This is from Krista, and enjoy. The other day, a podcast link came in my messages. And if you're into podcasts like I am, you do them and you listen to them. And Krista was interviewed, and we're going to hear from this podcast. And we've got the approval from Scott Greats to rebroadcast it in the next episode. But first, let's see what Notebook LM, the AI, came up with. And later, I think we'll hear Chris's voice in the future podcast.
When placed in a competitive environment and realizing you are entirely outmatched, a specific panic sets in. The instinct is to simply disappear. For 12-year-old Krista DeCroy, that desire to vanish was her default state. She was a skinny, profoundly shy kid who spent most of her time terrified of drawing attention to herself. The anxiety was physical. On Sunday nights, her dread of the upcoming school week and the terror of being called on triggered severe stomachache. This childhood insecurity is a vacuum of self-belief. Without a sense of worth, a person lacks the internal structure to defend against the pressure of being seen. Instead of letting her retreat, her father pushed her to step onto a very different kind of stage. He told his 12-year-old daughter to try out for a competitive swim team called the Peoria Area Water Wizards. She stepped onto the pool deck, facing a massive deficit. To make the team, kids had to swim all 4 strokes. Krista could barely manage a butterfly or a breaststroke, landing her on the lowest rung of a roster filled with kids who had been swimming since they were 5. The psychological strain of that moment is immense. A young girl whose survival mechanism is invisibility is now standing entirely exposed in a swimsuit, surrounded by athletes who have already mastered the environment. At this stage, Krista didn't have the internal reserves to believe in herself. That belief would have to be imported from someone else. Enter Mark Rauterkiss. He was Krista's very first coach with the Water Wizards, the external catalyst who supplied the perspective she lacked. Coach Mark certainly spent time correcting her physical mechanics in the water, but his primary construction project was her mind. He was building psychological armor for a kid who felt defenseless. He installed a very specific athletic mindset. He taught her that raw physical skill has zero value on its own. To actually execute under pressure, that physical ability requires the structural support of intense work ethic and mental fortitude. This framework pays its dividends in the agonizing seconds right behind the starting blocks. When a swimmer steps up, the anxiety of competition is converted and locked into focus before the starter pistol even fires. This dynamic rewires a terrified brain. It takes the concept of accountability, which an insecure kid normally views as a looming punishment, and redefines it as the highest form of professional support. Buoyed by that accountability, Krista evolved. The deeply shy novice transformed into a fiercely competitive athlete, moving through the water with total command. The athletic payoff for that foundational training arrived years later when she secured an NCAA Division I college scholarship. At the elite collegiate level, everyone in the pool is fast. What separated Krista from her competitors was the mental resilience Mark had planted back when she was 12. The lane lines of that local pool functioned as a crucible, manufacturing a leader who viewed pressure as a prerequisite for performance. Fast forward to the present day. Krista Hawkins is now a high-level executive advisor and the co-owner of a firm called Future Legacy Partners. Her daily mandate involves coaching thousands of top business leaders. Behind closed doors, many of these successful executives struggle with the same self-doubt that haunted her in elementary school. To pull them out of it, she deploys a rigorous corporate methodology. She anchors her training in holistic health routines, forward-looking accountability, and what she calls love leadership. This corporate playbook is a direct mirror of the system Coach Mark Rauterkiss used on her decades ago. The most effective executive leadership strategies in the corporate world are often scaled-up, refined versions of elite youth coaching. If you strip athletics down to their absolute core, sports are simply games of time, space, and relationships. Mark used his time on that pool deck to build a relationship that moved a terrified 12-year-old from the back of the classroom to the head of the boardroom. That investment of belief refused to stay contained to the water. It created a cascading effect, branching out from one athlete and eventually touching thousands of professionals across the country. The weight of a coach's legacy lives in the belief passed to a single athlete, which then amplifies across every professional she eventually leads.
Hey, thanks for the shout out in memory, Krista. I hope you and your family and your partner and your business and everybody you're attached to, especially your clients, are appreciating your gifts and your leadership. I want everybody else to stay tuned, subscribe to the podcast, and in the next episode, we're going to hear Krista's voice. Thanks for all you do for our sport.
Today's fortune statement is
Self-awareness is the first step to gaining control.
This comes from Mental Skills for Young Athletes, written by John Hogg, PhD, a sports psychologist from British Columbia, Canada. The idea here is simple but not easy. Reflect on it, then write about how it applies to where you are right now. The book and the online course are available at swimisca.com. Mental skills grow through attention, not intention.
We're going to turn off the stream. Wish everybody a healthy week. Peace.